So we're recording. I just need to check what episode this will be.
30 to 3, 4.
What did we did 32?
Intro was 32.
33. This is 34, and you're at 35.
Yeah.
So we're 34. Okay, cool. Wonderful. Well, and we're live. Hello, everyone listening. This is episode 35 of the Duke LDN Podcast, and 34. We just went over this, as you can see by everyone's disgusted looks. 34 of the Duke LDN Podcast, and episode 3 of the collaboration between myself and Identity Ideas Industry, which I've learned to say perfectly by this point. Today we are on the concept / episode of ideas. Last week was identity.
Yes.
With Paris and Glenn, which is already out, and if you haven't listened to it, please check it out. It's weird because it hasn't been released while we're recording this, but it will be last week when this comes out. So basically, as all of the episodes are, this one is based around Tali's intensive, which has 3 strands, one being identity, one being ideas, and one being industry. Each episode we both kind of chose a guest each, although I feel like this episode we both kind of unanimously agreed on both guests. We chose the guests based on what we thought they would bring to the topic, I guess, and maybe who we would look at as inspirations or maybe even like role models for these type of topics in our own practice and in sharing with others, maybe people that we would reference when we teach or when we talk about these topics with each other. What I'll do is what we've done each week is if you introduce Jonathan and I'll introduce Kenrick, and then you guys can kind of tell us a bit about yourself as well. That's cool.
Wondrous.
Or at least not introduce, but maybe why you chose
why
them.
you are here.
Yeah.
I find it hard. I'm going to reference both Ken and Jonathan. Maybe we can both do that.
Yeah.
You were both when I had the idea to do this, it was this strand I thought of, and it was both of you that I thought of. So
it was quite a unanimous agreement.
So if we get these two,
yeah,
we're doing this. But funnily enough, it's the last one that we're recording. But so Ken is I would consider to be my first sensei. He's not my first dance teacher. That would be Tanya Moore, who then ferried me to Boy Blue. And I wouldn't say I actually knew that much about Kenrick's process then. I'd say I know more about that from the past. I say the past year, but that's not true. Like late 2019, that became more apparent to me. But because the ideas strand of the intensive is so much about making efficiently, I'd say that Kenrick has that down. And so I thought it would be interesting. And again, like the other guests on the podcast, it's just a voice that we don't hear that much, considering the I was going to say gravitas. I'm going to commit to it.
Gravitas, I like
surrounding
that.
his name. So it's like, don't act like you're not an MBE, please. Let's not do that.
But it's quite it's like Glenn, I think, in the sense that it's how much we look at the person in contrast with how much we
know of them or hear them. And then I would consider almost certainly unbeknownst to him, Jonathan to be my last sensei, which is very strange because we've interacted in one period of time in 2016 and twice since, once on a Zoom call not too long ago and in passing in Sadler's Wells Cafe. But that is testament to the quality of my experience with him you, which was at Back to the Lab in 2016. I've mentioned this before on the pod, but I was a dancer in Carrie Ann on Wee's piece. And I would just sideline, we definitely do tangents here, but I would really recommend, if you're ever given the opportunity to be a dancer in any kind of intensive development program, it's a really wonderful opportunity to gain the lessons without any of the responsibility. Yeah, and I just gained so much from that. It was mostly around the analysis of my movement practice that was new to me, because the majority of my training was in hour and a half chunks, choreography based chunks, or in rehearsal where there's a very clear end goal that we're after. So that just went straight into my practice. And then anyone that's done the intensive will have heard me bleating on about Jonathan's book, Choreographer's Handbook, which I consider to be gold and that any maker should have. Yep. And I refer to it often, and just the distillation of ideas and concepts and analysis has been priceless to me since reading it.
Yeah, agreed.
And that is why, in my opinion, these two men are the perfect guests for this.
Yeah,
strand.
I mean, I don't have too much to add.
It was very comprehensive.
Yeah, that was good.
I've clearly thought about this. This moment.
He's been rehearsing it for 10 years. No, yeah, I mean, me and Jenny both have a copy each, even though we live together, of the book. Because she was traveling and we couldn't bear to not read it at the same time. She was leaving for like a week and she's like, well, I'm just going to buy another one then. I'm not taking yours. Yeah, and I mean, I think you introduced me to it through the first intensive, and I think there's a lot of stuff in there that, and I mean, I'm talking mostly about the book because that's the only, I guess, interaction I've ever had with you is through your book. And I was introduced to you through, I wasn't on Back to the Lab or anything, so I was introduced to you through Tali, through the book and through her talking about you. And yeah, I think what I loved about the book was threefold. I think firstly was the lessons in it. I think there was a lot of great stuff in there. I think secondly was a lot of it, I don't want to sound pretentious with this, but like there was things in there that I have thought, and I feel like the book allowed me to, or it validated my patterns of thinking. I was like, I'm sure this is like, I want to do something like this. And it was kind of reading it in the book. I was like, oh, it's okay to do that. It's okay. And I feel like also there's a lot of similarities with your intensive with that, where there was things that I did in your intensive that I had never been told, like, yeah, it's fine to be yourself. Like, don't change your dance for this. Like, let's look at your dance and let's look at your habits and expand on them, instead of saying, which I've been told in every class, is like, don't do what you usually do this is how you get better, which is there's a balance to be found. But there was a lot of parallels in the book where I was reading stuff and I was like, yeah, I've always thought this, but you articulate it way better and you expand on it a lot more. But it just kind of, it was reading that was a way to help me feel confident in my ideas, and that if some of the ideas that I had thought, alongside obviously a lot of new knowledge in the book, were validated, it may be that some of the other things I was thinking weren't nonsense, you know? So it kind of like helped my imposter syndrome of being like, yeah, maybe I do know some things that I'm talking about, you know? So that's why I'm, super happy to meet you and to have you here. And Mr. Kenrick.
Let's get the fanboy and girling out of the way at the beginning.
Yeah, we have to. I don't think we've ever spoken in a fanboy way. I haven't given Kenrick his flowers, especially not publicly. I don't think my personal flowers from my rose
here
garden.
They come.
No, I think first memory I have of you. Do you remember the club gel competition that ended up being a nightmare? But I remember I went there and it was this nightmare competition. I think I've spoke about this on the podcast with Ivan before, but it was just some nightmare thing that I found out about at Move It when I was like a super beginner, just like doing waves and like trying to impress girls. And so I went to this thing and I was like, I brought my friend along and I was like, I'm going to do my first ever dance competition and just go on this big stage and freestyle. And you were one of the judges. I didn't get through. So thanks a lot for that. No, I'm joking. No, I didn't get through because I was an absolute beginner. But I remember like, even though I didn't know you, they like announced all the judges and you all kind of seemed like big deals, which I think all of you were. It was like you, Ivan, Quayle, Simeon from Bird Gang, Thomas Simon. So it was like big people. But I remember in one of the breaks, you like spoke to me and you were like, oh yeah, like you were really good. Like you could get better, you know, like you could do this and this. And you were teaching me about waves. And there was you like, because I think with my waves, I used to like drop my arms as I waved and you like held my fingertips and you were like, now do a wave. What?
No, it's like, it's because I feel like you did that for me. Like
he was like, he like held my fingertips and he was like, now do a wave. And I did like that. And it like keeps the frame of where the wave is and it helps the clarity. And like I always remember, and I use that now when I'm teaching beginners, and I always reference you. I don't just steal your ideas. That's the first lesson of ideas. Don't steal them. But no, yeah, like I always remember that. And I think for me, that gave me a lesson of like, just like that planted the seed of like, I don't even know if you remember that or if you had remembered that, maybe now that I say it, but anyone that like gives advice or talks to beginners, it's like, you don't know how much of an impact that's going to have. Because maybe for you, that was just oh yeah, you could work on this. And for me, I was like, that was the only piece of advice I'd been given by a real dancer at this point, really. Mm. So that was like at that point, it was a big deal to me. And it was like something that I was like, oh, okay, well, he said maybe I could be good. Maybe I could be good, you know? And like Simeon said something nice to me when I was on stage and it was like, these things really hold a lot of weight. So I always remember that. And I also always remember that you've been supportive, like pretty much through everything I've done throughout the years. And you don't have to. I mean, there's also a bit of imposter syndrome in the sense that I don't think I'm anything special. But even way back when I first started and through Toy Box, and then when I started battling and you were like in the battle scene and you were doing like hip hop battles way before I was, and then with UMA, and it's like, you've always checked in. You've always like told me if you like something, even up to the other day, you wrote me about Elephant and you were like, oh, you voice noted me like, I like what you're doing and blah, blah. It's like from literally 2007 to now, you've checked in through every stage of my career in a place where, or in a kind of period when you've gone from like winning hip hop battles, choreographing big things, like doing your own. And I'm like, first of all, I'm like, do you do this with everyone? And if so, you're amazing. And second of all, it's like, just for me personally, it's like, it means a lot that you would even have the thought of like, oh, Luke's doing something cool. Let me let him know. So thanks for that. That's your flowers from me. And obviously I think, you know, you're incredibly like knowledgeable and talented and I love your work. And that almost goes without saying. Like, that's the sort of stuff that I'm like, of course you're amazing. But that's the stuff that stands out for me is the personal touch, because I think people maybe don't know how much of a big deal that is to people. And maybe they're like, oh, I don't know if you've ever felt this, but I think a lot of dancers are like, oh, well, why would they want to hear that I care about what they're doing? Like, maybe they don't reach out because they're like, oh yeah, but he's off doing his own thing. He doesn't need my validation. And it's like, I do. I really do. And I think a lot of people, and that's kind of like bled into my practice, and to make sure if I like something, I reach out and say it, or even if it's just a DM, like, I really like your work. Leave a comment or whatever, or call the person. So thank you for that. And that was a bit longer than I intended it to be, but
hey,
got to give them flowers.
Beauty of a podcast.
Yeah. So I don't know, to be honest, I don't know how much introduction these two need, but do you guys want, what I like to hear from guests is how you see yourself as a creative. Because often we can be like, oh, Kenrick is this person and this person. Like we had this with Paris last week, where I see Paris as a battler, but Paris doesn't see Paris as a battler. So it's just always interesting to me to see, like, how do you guys see yourself as creatives in this current moment, I guess? I don't know who wants
like
to.
How you'd introduce yourself in this moment.
Yeah.
Who wants it?
No, I was just thinking, as an older artist, the blessing I find now is that when I was younger, there was, of course, a sense of competition, a sense of having to step beyond imposter syndrome, to prove myself, and at every step that never ends. At every step of the way, you're in a different context, a different circumstance, different people, different pressures, and the focus is very strongly on what you're doing, on your own work, on where it fits into other things. Does it fit in? Who thinks it fits in? Who thinks it doesn't fit in? And so forth. And as I get older, it matters still. It would be stupid to say it doesn't matter. But what matters more to me is that I think I've realized that all the aspects of what I do within the dance community matter, and are equally creative, and are equally expressions of artistic purpose. And that includes particularly the conversations I have with other people. And I have to say, in this period of lockdown, there's not been much dancing, but there's been some really heart-to-heart reflecting together, artist to artist. And for me, it really revealed this period of time, all the financial difficulties, the way people have suffered, but this reaching out to each other as artists in this period of time has revealed to me how it's at the heart of what we do, and it's more important than who is seen to be rising, who is seen to be falling. And so when I hear you, Luke, describe that Kenrick had reached out to you and has reached out to you throughout your working life, and you making a call, can we do that for each other? Yes, please. That's at the heart of it. And if we don't reach out to each other and support each other, then there's nothing.
Yeah.
Great pod, guys. No, that was a wondrous thing. Might I ask, for anyone who finds Jonathan Burrows to be a stranger and a foreign name, how you'd introduce yourself to a stranger as a creative?
For anyone listening that doesn't know you.
Oh, sorry, you're asking me. Well, the first thing I have to say is that I'm not coming from the hip hop community. I have fallen by accident of meeting John Z. D as a student at the London Contemporary Dance School, into being invited to be amongst the hip hop community. I have to confess now that John Z had the misfortune to take part in the worst workshop, not only that I've ever taught, but I believe that has probably ever been taught in the dance sector. I was very young. I had no idea what I was doing. And I actually remember half the time looking to him, for, some ideas, which is something that I continue to do. But I have to say, I question sometimes. I understand why John Z invited me in. It was to do with, how can hip hop enter the space of the theatre? I think that's changed. I don't think that's the relevant question now. The relevant question is, what can hip hop teach theatre? And I think this is something that everybody is aware of. So I'm questioning my role, but it's such a gift to me to be amongst this community, and it's influenced large parts of my other work. That didn't answer your question. I was just
that's fine.
I was just placing myself in some kind of context.
Yeah, sure.
I'm a choreographer and I make performances, and that's it. That's how I would describe myself. And the book I wrote, which you mentioned very kindly, thank you for buying it.
Both of you.
It's I wrote the book for myself as a young imposter. And I think that's partly why it works. But also, I was teaching a lot of workshops at that time. Everything interesting that anybody said, I wrote down, and the whole book came from hundreds and hundreds of people's thinking. I was reflecting a moment.
We thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. Do you want to tell us who you are, sir?
Wow. I would say in a nutshell, I would call myself a movementician.
Ooh,
that's what I would say.
Ciao.
Because I get bored very easily, so I need to be active. I need to be doing some kind of movement. More hip hop, street dance orientated, obviously. I would say that I'm an expressionist across the board with regards to just art and just, it's not just about dance, it's also about designing, it's also about spoken word. And I would say that I wouldn't want anyone to think that I'm a gatekeeper. I would say I'm more I'm more about cultivating and not trying to change people, but at the same time help them to make changes. That's the type of person I am. In a
nice
nutshell.
Yeah, that's a good nutshell. Oh man, I have so many questions for the both of you, but I think because you went last, we'll start with my questions for you. I'm sure you've got a million as well, but I guess my first question on the topic of ideas is, you've got to a point now where you're very well known, especially in our community, but also now in the general world, I guess, your work at the Barbican is not just hip hop dancers coming to see it or whatever, So my question is around, it's not actually like a direct question, but could you tell us a bit about what it's like how it changes from ideas that when you're someone new and anything you come out with is new because we'd never seen you before, or like kind of me putting out a piece now is in a way, as much as it's tough, I have a lot less pressure, I would imagine, because nobody has any expectations of me in the wider world. It's just I'm just putting something out. If it's good, it's good. If it's not, then cool, but there's nothing attached to it. But I always thought with you, where you're on, however many pieces you've done at that level now, is it kind of does it change how you generate ideas in the sense that you've got like a brand, you've got a reputation, you've got something to uphold and expectations on you that maybe factor into your idea creation? Like, I can imagine, not that this is a direct comparison, so don't be offended by this, but in the same way that Marvel would make movies and be like, as much as we want this to be a good creative movie, we've still got the Marvel brand to think about, and it has to have a certain formula. Otherwise, our fans are going to go, oh, that was like they did at the beginning of WandaVision of, what is this rubbish, So do you feel a bit like this with Boy Blue sometimes, or with your work?
You know what? Yeah. Sometimes I go, but yeah, I feel like the young Ken was just very raw, very real. It is what it is. I'm expressing myself. I'm just dancing. That's what I want to do. If someone wants to dance, let's dance. That's it. So if you make something and you enjoy it, cool. If you get an opportunity to go on stage and do it, cool. If it's just the fact that we was able to just be creative and enjoy the energy in the space, cool.
Yeah.
Now, there is the pressures, there is the expectations, not only from myself, but also from the people that we work with, say the Barbican, expectation with regards to the dancers and the performers that we're using, the platforms that we do. Because for me, I will do something from a breaking convention to a Dancer's Delight to a community show at Barking Broadway. Yeah. To me, there is no difference to them. Right. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what the level of platform it is. It's no different. You still need to bring quality. You still need to bring an energy. We have a reputation. We've been around now for 20 years. So people are going to expect something. Is there a particular brand or formula? I would say, yes, there is. Over the time, you do start to evaluate and you make yourself into a case study. So you start to look back at your work. You start to look at, what are the common denominators in what I'm doing? What is my process? To some of the performers, you've danced with me quite a few times now. You've done this type of work with me. Yeah. Can you see common denominators? Let's have a conversation, because if there is certain journeys or there's little secrets that's inside of the the movement, let's exploit that a little bit more. So where I'm now, I want to go back to young King, and I want to go back to the raw, don't care. I care too much sometimes. Now I care too much. And I'm a bit like, because the way that the world has moved, we've been in it over a year of this energy. I'm like, I care too much. And that care is not ego talking. That is literally my most vulnerable space of like, you care too much, you fear too much, you're allowing the ego to stop you from going back to that rawest form. So for me, when I'm in that space of creating, I want to be so real and so raw and so honest emotionally and, you know, spiritually in that sense, that I just need to just go, bam, just do what I need to do. And sometimes you do feel as though you can't go this way, that way because of the brand.
Yeah.
But we are vast in what we do.
Of course.
Because there's a lot of stuff that I've done that people wouldn't realize I've actually done that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because they go, oh, but you're more this.
Yeah,
go,
yeah.
I can do that. It just depends on the mood or the feeling that I'm in to go that direction.
And also it's not that even if you couldn't do that, you might want to, and you might want to explore something that you haven't done or can't do. And, you know, that's also a viable option as an artist. But I guess also what I always look at kind of people like you and, you know, in the general entertainment world, even I think of like, if we're thinking of people that are artists that are a brand and stuff like that, like someone like Drake or something like that. These are the things that I think about is it's not only your artistic self that has expectations, but in terms of even like money and like you have a family and you have dancers that rely, like if you decide to go left and just do anything, then it's like, well, all these Boy Blue dancers that are working for me and getting these paychecks, what if the barber can go, oh, we don't like this, we're dropping you, or whatever it is. And then they're all, it's not just, you know what I mean? Like you have, and I'm not trying to rub this in, but like you have a lot of people on your back that rely off this brand that is your creative. So it for me, I'm always in awe of like, that must be a real tough position to be an artist, but be in the position of like a CEO in a company where it's like, there's from the one point of me creating, you know, there's a lot of ramifications. If I just go, well, I'm going to do Magic Mike's type show, or, you know, just some random, like, I don't know, just like, imagine Boy Blue's next performance was just like Kenrick topless.
Chocolate City.
Wow.
With oil on him. It'd be like,
wow.
What's happening?
Because it has to have a reason.
Yeah.
Do you know, if people was to go down that route, that kind of commercial corporate route, there has to be a reason. If it's a thing of, you know what, this is about making money, then it's about making money.
Sure.
And you do it with that purpose, knowing that, you know, you put the quality in, this is what it is, and it just, that it, you know, it just brings in income. That's all you're thinking about. But across the board, yeah, branding wise, it is very important. I think there needs to be, for me personally, when you talk about like Marvel, there needs to be a particular, the Easter eggs in your work. There are certain signature, there's methodologies, there's processes that I will always go through in my work. I will always go, let me go through this method or this method.
In terms of creation or in terms of what we see at the end?
As a whole.
Okay.
Yeah, as a whole. There is a journey. There's definitely a journey from A to B. There's definitely a journey. For me, it is about, you know, if I listen to the music first, or is there an idea, you know, there's a stimulus. Then from there, where do we go? Sometimes I could just be in the kitchen doing something. I hear a track. Yeah. Stop everything what I'm doing. I need to, what is this? Shazam. Bam. Let me listen to this a bit more. Then ideas are flowing. Write it down, leave it there, carry on with life. So there's always those who know me, I've got books of writing, ideas, flip chart paper, writing ideas. Because I feel like I'm a visual learner.
Right.
So for me, in order to make sure I can have clarity in my explanation, I draw it out.
Right.
And those who have seen any of the diagrams, you'll think it's some kind of Egyptian hieroglyphic equation, maths and all of that stuff. So yeah, there is a brand, there is expectation, there is pressure because 1, I have a family, 2, co-artist director of the company, 3, just the love of our community itself. You mean there is the pressure of that because for me, whenever we do a show and Boy Blue's there, if we're doing a tech rehearsal, everyone goes. let's see what they're coming to bring. So then we go, okay, guys, you know the situation. If we're going to do a Dance of Delight, you know there's going to be some of the younger guys bringing some fresh new stuff. You've got some of the cats who have been around the same as us are going to bring some stuff. Everyone's going to have that competitive energy to be the top bill. And also a lot of people want to be in the last part of the show.
Always.
You know what I mean? If you're in the last part, it always kind of goes, oh, okay, the energy. So when it comes, I go, guys, we've got stuff to do. Like, there's no long thing about it. But then there's moments where it's just like, we'll do a studio show. When we do some of our stuff at Spotlight, and we used to do it at Maryland, of let's just play with some ideas. Let parents and friends and family come and see the ideas that we're creating. And it may not have an outcome, but at least we just play.
So you kind of like intentionally create that space for you guys to also have an outlet.
Yeah, to play.
Yeah.
Freestyle your ideas. It's sometimes structure can create limitation.
Sure.
So you do sometimes need those moments of just a splurge, just allow yourself to just be in the space and exist, and allow people to spectate what that is, because then, you know, there's more ideas or more methods towards creating what you want to create as well. So I think there is, for me, a conscious and a subconscious pressure that I do put on myself when I think about it more. Subconscious pressure that is there. Your Boy Blue, your Kenrick, these are the things you need to do. Conscious pressure in the sense of still sustaining some freedom, but still having some form of structure, like an orderly chaos. Let's try and create this orderly chaos. So
that makes sense. Is there something? Oh, go on.
Sorry, just to add to that a little bit. So I think we've spoken about it before with Boy Blue and Zoo Nation being MPOs. So what's the National Portfolio Organisation? Yeah. So to get that funding, just for context for people, it's like a 4-year plan, and you have to fulfill those plans. And for us at Zoo Nation, that's a production year, engagement year, production year, engagement year. And if, for instance, if it was similar for Ken, regardless of how he's feeling, he has to make a production that year.
Yeah.
And that, before arriving at the time to make it, I would personally find extremely daunting to have to. Yeah. And I
found that even with little stuff like open heart surgery or back to the lab, like just even a tiny little pressure of like, you have to make something now for the next 5 days. It's like, oh, what if I wake up on Tuesday and don't want to? Like, let alone an entire year and a whole, you know, theatre full of people.
And I think Ken's done a really good job of I don't think the pressure like goes away from that side of it, but just carving out a space and the time with everything else you've got going on in your life for like flow to happen. Because if you just thought about that calendar and time frame, I don't know how creative anyone would necessarily feel with that countdown.
Yeah.
We also need to have a good team around you. If you've got a good team, I mean, it's not just myself who runs Boy Blue, it's Mikey as well, Mikey J. So because we have our relationship and we have our understanding creatively, people will say, okay, Mikey just does the music. No. He's as creative as I am. Do you know what I mean? If not sometimes more, because he will create the concept, the music. Ken, here's an idea. And then I have to then respond to that. Or there's times I go, Mike, I've heard these couple of tracks. I need, can you put this into a soundtrack? There's a feeling here. And then around that, because of the whole MPO status, you've got your general manager, you've got your creative education you've got your chief exec. So with all of that, there is space to be creative. But what's come to light for me is that I'm having to learn to delegate a lot more. I have to free up certain things. Some of the stuff before, I'm like, nah, I can't, because of past experience of delegating this job or this situation or whatever. I'm still having to deal with it because it's not being dealt with properly. So then I go, you know what?
It's my least favorite thing to do.
I might as well just do it myself. Whereas now, in order to find more space to be creative. Say, for example, back to lab, the 5 days. If I'm in a space of, if I'm non-creative, I still have this level of creativity within myself that I could just pull out and go, I want to play with this, I want to play with that. And whatever comes from this, this is what I'm presenting.
Right.
So it's about having a strong unit around you that's not babying you, but supporting what it is that you need to do as a creative.
And maybe taking the extra weights that don't need to be carried so that you can carry the real weight.
Exactly. Because you want to, the aim now is that you want to be able to open other doorways, and you want to create create doorways for other spaces. You can't just stay here when it comes to your ideas. You want to go to here. If you want to get to here, what support and backing do you need to take you to the next level when creating ideas? And it's not saying that you need people. It's saying, what do you need to get yourself to the next space of creating ideas? That's one of the major, most important things, because you can have a great team, but if you're not great here and great here, then you're not gonna push. The team can't push you because you become dead weight.
Right.
So those pressures and the anxiety of, we're at the Barbican. So we've got to make sure that we put on a show this time. We've got to make sure the quality. Boom. Now we're in MPO, and we have to make sure reports. We have to make sure that we're engaging. We have to make we're doing it already. But the additional pressure of, you have to report it, and it has to be worded in a particular way, and you have to be seen to be doing these things. It's like, seen to be doing it, we are it. It's like, come out. Like, you have to, it's a lot, and you've got to kind of just hold that, like, put the pressure in it like clouds. And when it rains, it rains. But at the end of the day, the sun will come through those clouds, and you will see everything that you've achieved.
What a poetic way of... Jonathan, is this something that you've found that you've had to struggle with, or is there a difference in your the kind of pressures that are on you in terms of creation?
Well, I mean, I have huge respect for anybody who takes on, leads a bigger organization or a group of people or a collaboration in that way. And but for myself, and maybe this is useful for some artists out there to hear, I found that this didn't suit me. It didn't speak to how I could work. So 20 years ago, I did have a group of people that I worked with. And I was registered as a company and so forth. And I closed it all down. And had a board of directors. And it was really hard for them. I remember people in meetings saying, "You're crazy, this is the end of your career." And I remember sitting at the table and saying, but I have within this structure, I have no possibility to fail. And what I'm longing for is the possibility that I could step somewhere that might be more risky and so forth. So I have to say it was the best decision that I made. So the way that I work now is that I've the one similarity to you, Kenrick, is that I work with a musician, and we've worked. His name is Matteo Farjan. He comes from classical music. We've been together 30 years. Wow, it's a bit like you and Mikey J. And I have to say, I've been with Mikey J in the studio, hearing him speak, and I'm excited by what he says the way that I'm excited by what Matteo says. So it's a fruitful relationship. It's often been there in dance. But after 10 years of working, Matteo and myself, I just said to him, look, let's do this differently. Let's share everything. So we'll conceive work together. We'll create it together. We'll rehearse it together. We'll perform it together. We'll administrate it together, and we'll get paid the same. And we drew up an agreement with a lawyer that that's what we would do. And it meant that it was harder for us to apply for larger sums of money. We only apply for funding very occasionally, 2 or 3 years when we need a R&D, something to stop earning a living and to kind of go deeper into a process. But at the same time, we're very light on our feet. as a structure. And we've gone on working. We go on traveling all over the world, performing and teaching. And we don't have an office. We work in our own homes. And this is the best bit. We have a manager, but the manager doesn't really do anything except sign the contract. Nice. And if we have a problem, then we say, you'll have to speak to our manager. But the manager is a kind of, it's she now, Jane, it was Nigel before, Nigel Hines and now Jane Greenfield. They're a kind of totem manager. Anyway, this works for us.
Yeah, I can imagine. To be honest, I have a friend that takes that one step further, and she doesn't actually have a manager, but she tells people, speak to my manager, and gives
it's her.
And it's her. Just as a
that's what you might have said there.
As a face. It's just like she signs a different name and says, yeah, this is what my manager. Sorry, she can't do that for this fee, or whatever it is like.
I'm sure it makes a difference.
Yeah, she says the way people speak to, and we know this person, but I won't say on the podcast, but. The way people speak to her manager, in air quotes, is way more polite and forgiving than how they speak to her, and in terms of the fees that they offer. And if she says, no, I can't do it for that, they'll be like, well, but, and if the manager says it, it's like, okay, cool, we'll see what we can do. So it's just interesting.
Yeah, I'm choreographing a play / musical. I was going to say thing, but it's not a thing. It's play / musical at the end later this year, and like pushing for an assistant. And I can tell in the conversation that I'm having that it's going the way it's changed now, but that it was going the way it was because I was representing myself. But I am an agent. I represent people. So I think because I was responding the way an agent would, it kind of changed the tone of the conversation. It's like, no, I do need one. Like I could tell an agent that, but they would just be, speaking for me. I need what I need. That doesn't change. I am interested to pick up in what you said about if you have to put time aside to go deeper into a process and what that might look like for you. Whether that's more time, exclusive time.
Yeah, well, it's just what you just said. I really recognized it, that the way you keep working is not to fantasize a new or an original which you have never arrived at, but to look at the elements that are already there, and then to reveal in those elements a spirit of the thing that you maybe have overlooked, and that's what plants the seeds for what can happen next. But sometimes you have to cut yourself space to do that because of the demands of earning a living and so forth. So I think. Those moments of saying, right now I have 2 weeks or 3 weeks that I'm going to do research and development. It almost doesn't matter what you do, but it's the moment of reflection is what matters. And sometimes it can take, it can take months or years, and something that you'd given up on or you thought hadn't worked suddenly resurfaces and becomes alive and comes to fruition.
I think this is something that I'm kind of starting to realize in myself as kind of like, well,
just the exasperation of that sigh. Like I've realized now, I've seen it, I can't unsee it.
It's a stressful topic for me, but like I think this is something that I guess with idea creation is that, how do I say this, like taking the things that are already in me that I know I like. And like, for me, it's not only the process of like finding them, but it's also like, and this may be personal to me, maybe not. I don't know if you guys identify with this, but is like realizing that those things are valid and that I can create something out of them. Because a lot of the time, and I don't know if this is more of a hip hop thing or maybe it's just a me in hip hop thing, but a lot of the things that I think that I like or want to create work about or want to do are very not what's out there. And that used to be a negative. And it used to be like, well, Kenrick's never done something like this, or Tali's never done something like this. So it doesn't, I don't see, let's say like myself, like in a creative sense, I don't see anyone else in the scene that does what I do or that I want to do. And for a long time I was like, that is a negative thing. Like, oh, well, no one's going to like it then because it doesn't fit in with like this type of hip hop theater or this type of hip hop or this type of contemporary dance or whatever. And the more and more I kind of felt these feelings, they stayed strong. I was like, oh no, but I want to create this type of work. I was like having an internal battle of like, no, you can't, because no, that's not what people like. And now I'm starting slowly to arrive at the point that that's what I think could make me successful, is that no one else is doing the stuff that I want to do. But I guess it's that whole thing of, like you said about going back through your formulas. Like I'm going back through everything I've created, and I'm like, there is a consistent thread. There is things that I like and want to address. And the fact that there is not any other work like this is a hole. It's a niche. It's a gap in the scene that if I learn and do what I'm doing properly and express myself well and do the research and do the work, I could exploit that and sell my work, because no one else is going to be able to do what I'm doing. But that's taken me such a process to even get there. Yeah. It was just years of me telling like, no, this is not, this is not something you can do. And I think it's funny that you all three are here, because I feel like you were all in that process, like the Burke and Tali's workshops and like seeing your work and stuff is like all of these things that I considered when like beating myself down and being like, you're never going to be able to do this. When I looked at these things, I was like, oh yeah, like if I look back, if I go into my own work and identify what it is that is, even if I hadn't realized it at the time, why was I doing this like this? Like why, when I do hip hop battles, do I like minimal movement and not like everyone used to, oh, you don't put enough energy and blah, blah, blah. But why do I not put enough energy? Oh, because I like intricate static movement and finding that and being like, oh shit, that's not a negative. That's what's going to make me successful if I put it in the right context. Is like, it's such an epiphany that I'm literally arriving at like this year.
I wondered while you were speaking if it is as a result of coming from a style. So it's like the order of things is being immersed in it and then having to
break out,
pull back to look at it and the components of that style. I guess there's more risk of finding things that are in opposition or don't make sense in correlation to the things and the foundations that you've learned. So I wonder if that's the part that's like, but it doesn't fit. Yeah. Because you had like a set of rules that you followed when you were training.
Yeah, that's true.
Because when you said about, I mean, I know we were just examples, but Tali doesn't do it that way, or Ken hasn't do it that way. And I feel like there will always be, might be a really rudimentary statement, but there'll always be a Luke-sized niche in the scene. Like there'll always be a place your name here niche in the scene, because we are just a collection of our training and experiences. And then that relates to a point that you made, Ken, about, wanting to return to the raw space, and like how possible is that when you've built on that raw space with experiences, with further training, that can you actually get back to that? And I'm not sure we ever can. We can get back to a raw space, but can we ever get back to the source from which we came? I mean, I wouldn't want to. I'd be very tense and I'd have I'd be very clean, but I'd have no dynamic skills.
But that's what I think makes it interesting. I think like what you were saying about the niche. I remember when we started to play with the popping and the animation, and we used to get a lot of stick. I remember one time we did one show in Croydon, Fairfield Halls, and one guy came up to me and goes, I'm feeling what you're doing, but that's not popping. So okay, cool. Yeah, that's not popping. So okay. And he's looking at me like I'm going to go...
Like defend yourself?
Yeah. I'm like, okay. I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
2-2s now. Time passes. I'm seeing people doing it.
Yeah.
So it's like, at some point, you have to stop caring when you're creating. if you understand the foundation and the formalities of a particular style, then you have to play. Because then, if anything, everyone just falls into place. And it got to a point where it was just like, I'm bored.
Yeah.
I'm really, really bored. I'm seeing everyone doing exactly the same moves, the exact same way, because maybe they're all dancing in the same crew, or they're all in the same jam, and they're looking at the influential people and they're just copying the influential people. And it's like, but you're an individual.
To be honest, this is how I feel about hip hop theatre.
Right.
At the moment. I don't know if you guys like would agree, but this is my personal thing of why, I mean, it's kind of driving me at the moment, but like, this is what I feel about hip hop theatre is like, there's let's say UK hip hop theatre. It's like, and I'm not saying this to be shady or whatever, but I just think that there's a lot of the same shit, and it doesn't seem that anybody has like questioned why we're doing this same shit. Like, hip hop theatre is literally just hip hop dancers doing theatre. It doesn't need to be dark and moody. It doesn't need to be.
Had this
For me, it's and I think a lot of it is people looking at Boy Blue. I think there's a percentage of that, and there's a lot of stuff that I see that I'm like, oh, you're just trying to do what they do because you've looked at Boy Blue and said that's hip hop theatre, and it's like, no, that's someone doing hip hop theatre. That doesn't mean that's the only way to do this.
Yeah, or the version of, I was going to say anti-zoo, but I don't think that that's correct. But like, we don't want to do the mainstream commercial version of, and the opposite of that must be abstract, dark.
Yes.
A contemporary version of this thing that we do that doesn't reflect in any way what we actually normally do.
Yeah, and it's like I think you see it, I see it a lot at like people, I mean, Back to the Lab and not Back to the Lab, Open Art Surgery is a good example, I think, for me, because it's like maybe people that haven't done a lot of theatre, and I was one of them. Like,
I did it as well.
Yeah, of course, we've all done it. I'm not saying this to say I'm better.
At the end of the week, I was like, I had a great week, but what on earth was that?
Yeah. And like, I guess it's what you said about
Hell Vortex that we made. Like, why did we make that? That doesn't reflect me or my artistry in any way, but here we are.
Were you talking about Open Art Surgery when you said about you felt the pressure to like, you were in that space in a theatre, so you had to like, everybody take your shoes off and like...
Yeah, because I did it with Jack Point and Mackenzie, and we actually started the week saying, like, let's keep it light. Let's make a point of keeping it light. Darkest thing I've ever made. By a long shot, but I think that was reflective of the time. Yeah. And when I was supposed to do this year's Back to the Lab, and I had a Zoom with Anthony and Jonathan, and then John Z and Julia, and I'd made a point for myself that doing Back to the Lab, and I think I voiced it so they could hold me accountable if I wavered from it. Like, I'm doing what I do.
Yeah.
Like, I can only do this, especially at this point. I'm 34 years old. I've been doing this for 15 years. Like, I can't allow myself to enter that space and be
knocked off track.
Knocked off by all the components that make this a thing, like Sadler's Wells, and, you know, that alone just straight away just goes, do something other than what you do, because what you do is freestyle to tracks in your room, or you go to a studio with your friend and make like tactile musical duets. That will not do here. Yeah. But I think really magical things will happen if we commit to the idea and the fact that it will do here, and we actually need it here. And for us to spend so much time building ourselves up and validating ourselves for ourselves, but then to enter those spaces and like lose it all, it's like that's a loss for everyone involved, including those institutions, because they need us.
And I think this is what Jonathan was saying at the very beginning of like the question now being, what can hip hop teach theatre? So lovely little segue there. But I don't know, maybe from your position, if you've seen this that we're talking about, like maybe hip hop artists having something special and having a practice and having, you know, some magic coming into the space and kind of, it, in my harsh terms, this is my own words, but like going from like magical, amazing hip hop dancers to a mediocre fake version of a contemporary piece. Do you know what I mean? And I think this is how I see it, is like they lose everything that makes them special because they're trying to fit in. And it's like, you're then just a copy of, like I said, a bad version of something that you would expect to see in this space. And I would add, this is usually done without any knowledge of the contemporary or classical scene. So you're not only copying a crappy version of the thing, you're copying a crappy version of what you think the thing is without any expertise in that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's like, how is that a better option than being great at you? How is that a better option than, you know, going in and just doing a solo and freestyling to a track, you know, if that's what you do or whatever. Mm-hmm. That was my own little aside. But my question, Jonathan, is like, have you seen any version of this from your perspective?
Yeah, I think, Tali, everything you said, I'm grateful to hear that conversation in the air. It feels to me very important. But I think you put your finger on it. Where anybody listening to this podcast couldn't have seen your body movements as you were describing the Sadler's Wells Theatre, and your hands went up as though a weight was crushing down towards
that
you.
Subconscious body language.
And I think this is not uniquely to do with the Sadler's Wells Theatre, but it is to do with what is the space that can hold and give permission to the spirit of this thing. And spaces have very strong effects on the way that we think, we breathe, we imagine, we be together, and so forth. And it's not like I have an answer to it, but for me, I think it's just important that we as artists put that conversation into the public space, into the public realm, and that the institutions, you know, begin to listen and understand better. I mean, at the most simple level, those you know, archetypal studios with mirrors, with ballet bars, with complex security codes to get in and out. They're quite desert-like places to try and work. I work in my living room.
Same.
I haven't got any space. I have to say that at lunchtime on Monday, and it was the first time I'd been in a dance studio since September, everybody went out to get sandwiches, and I was like running around the space waving my arms because it was so beautiful. It's like, wow, the ceiling is high. The walls are really far away.
Like, I would never jump and touch my ceiling, but I'm aware of how close it is
like
to
you could
me.
if you wanted.
Yeah, like it's just the feeling of doing what I did in my room in a bigger space is a very...
I also like the separation as well. Like, you finish and you can leave, or you can arrive there. Like, when I create at home, it's like, all right, I'm done training, and I just sit down on my sofa. Like, I'm in this. I'm still in the same space. There's no like creative and relaxed space. I think.
I thought of Sadler's, and again, I guess this is the institution that I have most experience in. Zoo Nation, our resident company there, having been involved with breaking convention projects, having seen a lot of work there, and I think that would come from what I've seen there. And again, it as an example, but the programming, like the hip hop is confined to breaking convention. It's a weekend in May. You can have a weekend in May. Or you can have a BC Presents.
Yeah.
And as someone that doesn't, I've spoken about this on the Zoom, and, you know, many times, just my falling in the crack between, or no, I wouldn't say falling anywhere, but being the filler between hip hop and contemporary, and as you say, with very little formal experience in the contemporary world. But I think that's where I am put. I wouldn't be programmed in the same way as a Crystal Pipe, Akram Khan would. Maybe I will as I get older, because they seem to favour mature artists, but I wouldn't get a Breaking Convention Presents either. So it's natural for me to be like, to make myself fit here, I have to go there and really hark back to my styles. And that's going to feel very strange to me. Suddenly, like, Tali with a locking and popping solo, let's go. Or just ultra contemporary for the sake of fitting in. I won't do either of those things, but that's where that inclination has come from. And just in case I forget it, Ken responded to Luke's point about it was about creating, and you said at some point you have to not care. And I don't think it was a point made in the book explicitly, but I think I learned it from Jonathan in some way, that I feel that even to start a process, like, I can't begin unless it's entirely careless. Like, I don't get anywhere if I care. Like, it just won't, I won't have enough to work with if I care a lot at the beginning.
I think this is interesting because I think we've had a couple of conversations around this sort of topic, and I think, again, it'd be nice for you guys to weigh in on
the things we've spoken about repeatedly.
Yeah, but like, I don't know, the way I perceive this is we create differently in this sense, because you've said that to me before, that you create from a space of like not caring and it needing to be for you mostly, right? Mm-hmm. And I think for me, I think what the conversation we had was that I see creation and dance and art as more communication than anything. Like, if I was locked in a vacuum, I'd stop creating, because
what's the point?
Yeah, for me personally, like, my creation is to communicate things that, like, if I'm dancing to a song that I love, it's not for me because I'm happy to listen to it. It's for you to feel how I feel when I listen, and I want to show you, like, I'm like, please enjoy this, how much I enjoy this. Like, if I need to dance to get that across, fine. So I think for me, it's not a case of starting from not caring. It's starting from a place of actually caring and caring about the audience. And it's hard for me sometimes to find a positive version of that, because I can easily get carried away in like, I hope they like it. I hope they like it.
Yeah.
When actually the point is, I have something I need to communicate with people, and how can I best communicate that? So in that way, I need to understand how audiences perceive things and how it could be seen, and I need to get a lot of opinions on it, because it's not about, like, I could look at a piece of work and be like, I love it, and then I show it to Jen, I show it to you, I show it to Ken, whoever, and you guys say, yeah, but it doesn't, like, from what you're saying, this doesn't give me that. And that's important to me.
Right.
Because my whole point of creating this is so that you can get from it what I want you to get from it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Shall I?
Go on.
Do you need to formulate?
Yeah.
I'll go.
What was the last? Go back to the last line you said.
I said, like, the reason for me creating is that I want you to get from it what I want you to get, or like what I want you to get something from it, and that's the point of me creating even. So it's therefore important for me to get perspectives, for me to understand audiences, because it's not just about me and whatever I put on stage.
That is not a sentence.
Is it not?
That's an explanation.
What's that last sentence you said?
Sorry, I was expanding on the last sentence.
Fine,
Get out of here.
I hear you, bro, but
Go on.
I don't care. That, with regards to the audience,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm such a Libra. When I'm creating work, or when we're creating work, we have these three things.
Sure.
Entertainment, education, and enlightenment.
Okay.
So when I'm making work, if I'm thinking about my audience, I'm not necessarily caring if you get it.
Okay.
Because some of the work that we create is up for interpretation.
Sure.
But inside of it, I'm going to entertain you, I'm going to educate you, and you're going to leave with a level of enlightenment.
Okay.
If I start, because I'm trying to think of what you said about the positive way of doing it. If I go to this person, go to that person and go, what do you think? For me, after a while, it becomes too many voices.
Sure.
And the one voice I really need to hear is my own internal voice of the appreciation of where I got to from here to the stage.
Mm-hmm.
And because I know sometimes people want feedback, and feedback is another kind of topic when people ask for feedback.
Yeah.
but sometimes the feedback will influence you too much to a point where what did you initially want to do and say through your work?
This is what I find hard about open art.
Agreed. Yeah.
Right. So therefore, like I appreciate all what's going around, but is that me? Is that my identity? Is that my idea? Oh, you know, maybe if you did this again, it gets to a certain point. Even for me, when people go to me, Ken, have you got feedback? I'm like, leave me alone. Like, in my head, go away.
Yeah.
Like, don't ask. Let me just appreciate what you've done, or not appreciate what you've done. Let me have that experience. But when you go into a space where it's like, okay, what did you think? Give me feedback. I'm just like, you're, and I know some people may argue with me, and that's fine, argue. You say, but feedback is essential for development. But your development is essential within yourself.
But I feel like feedback only works if the person asking for it is articulated
what they want,
what they wanted from it. Because in the case of open art, or there's another event that I went to that we thought was just a session, but it was actually more tightly curated and led, and like you were paired up and you'd do a round, and then some feedback was given, and it was just like,
I didn't ask for this.
We didn't care about what just happened. So I don't need your feedback on it, because we're not revisiting it again. We just danced for 3 minutes and that's what it was. Yeah. So you're fine. I find that getting closer to the not caring aspects, I care a lot, but I don't care at all. And I think I care a lot about the idea. I don't care about the outcome when I'm making it. I think to do that blocks out the possibilities for me and where it can go if that goal is the most important part of it. I
think kind of like on what both of you said, I think the way and again, like I'm not saying this in a way like I'm right or defending my corner. This is just where I'm at as an artist. Is like, I see it like trying to explain an idea. Like this happens with me and you all the time, but like I have something in my head that I'm super passionate about, right? And I start to say it to Tali and she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, you're not making any sense. And I'm like, okay, wait. What about if I explain it like this, or I use an analogy or this? And then she's like, oh yeah, I get it. Like, and that's what I want with my art, is that not like necessarily I need feedback on the idea or what, like I know what I'm trying to say and what I'm passionate about, but I need to know that you feel something or you understand something, whether, you know, it might not be exactly what I've intended, but it obviously with art, it's a bit more abstract than conversation where I'm trying to say something particular. But it's like there's a feel, like say the work I'm working on at the moment, there's a feeling and an aesthetic that gives me a certain feeling when I see it in places. And what I've seen is like a bit of it here, a bit of it in music, a bit of it in fashion, a bit of it in this. And I'm like, I want to bottle that and put that on stage. So I need to know that you guys can feel that feeling through my work, but it's not about me feeling it because I feel it. I can go and listen to the song that makes me feel. I can look at the Louis Vuitton video or this or that makes me feel that. But my point is that I want to bottle it and communicate it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and so therefore that is what's going to create your brand. Is the way in which you want to communicate your work. Right. Because choreography is choreography, movement is movement. You're going to express yourself, but it's those little Easter eggs that creates your brand in how you communicate and put it on stage. And then once you start to find that, your ideas will be seamless in your journey. Do you know what I mean? Because and the reason why I said I don't care about the audience is that if I care too much, I'm trying to make you too comfortable. Right. So kind of going back into what you said about the all the hip hop theatre, hip hop dance theatre stuff looking the same. Yeah. The issue is that, for example, if Breaking Convention has A, B, C, D, and the next year A, B, C, D, and the next year A, B, C, E, or whatever, you know what I mean?
Are these representative of the performers?
Yeah, right? These different groups, but similar ones. People are going to start to look at that as a formula and go, in order to get onto that platform, I have to do this.
And can I say that I think that's what's happened?
Right? So
I'll be the one to say it.
So the issue...
I'll fall on that sword.
So even, for example, so Breaking Convention is one platform. Yeah. Dancers are like, serious about street dance when it used to be about. Because particular people's, let's say, for example, we would be on stage and we would hit those stages. People would think, okay, there's a formula. Even this goes far back as GWI competition.
I think
time.
anything of that nature, even, you know, faculties on teaching camps and stuff, like, oh, those are the styles. Oh, that's the popular, you know.
That's what's popular. But what they're not understanding is that for me, when we've done breaking convention, every year we will do something different. And they will have a formula, there'll be a brand, but it's something different. I'm making a conscious decision.
I was going to say, do you feel that you have to do that given that you are gifted this slot year on year?
So I make a conscious decision, or me and Mikey make a conscious decision to go, we're doing this year. We're doing that year. What did we do for this show? Let's do something different. That's why we've got piles of work, because we could use and recycle that piece. But you know what? Nah, we're going to go and do something else because this requires this. So what people are missing is that if you're trying to copy a brand, it doesn't work, because what you're not in the studio, you're not in the person's mind. So you can't fully understand. You're seeing it from an outside point of view and going, that's the way.
I would maybe use the analogy of like DC and Marvel in the way that, like, and I don't know if you guys are like, I use analogies to understand everything.
Give me that.
But like how DC were getting bad ratings and tried to inject humor into some of their works. And I can't remember which two films it was, but one was super dark and then the next one was way too funny. And it was like, because Marvel had this like humor consistently, and they were like, well, we just need to add what Marvel had, and it didn't work, and that was equally as bad.
Bro, I'm on your tip, because DC is actually a darker comic.
Yeah, right? And it's like, instead of doing their thing,
do your thing. Marvel is doing what Marvel is doing. The only right now, as we're talking about this, the only thing I've seen of late, which is I've gone DC, yes, is Snyder's cut of Justice League. Yeah, that to me is the best one.
I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard about
it.
Bro,
when you watch it, you'll understand the situation. Yeah,
you guys move. No,
no, it's fine. Keep going. Yeah, no, I'm here for it.
But what it is
that leaning away from the mic. Don't need it.
It's what it is that the original version, and this comes with ideas. Yeah, the director Snyder that was supposed to be on the original Justice League, he left obviously because of bereavement and stuff. Then he did his own version. So what they did is they took everything out and they did something else with it. You watched it and you go, that's dead. Then you watch his version and you just go,
I have heard about this. I have heard about
and you start to feel what you need to feel from DC. Marvel has done that. So now going back to our area, our chamber, right? When it comes to looking at a formula or assuming that formula works for this platform, no. What it is that you've got to create what you need to create and not rely on that platform as if it's the be all and the end all. If you do that, then you're putting yourself in a place of failure. It's not a thing of whereby we have been blessed to be doing that platform. It's that I'm going to go to them and go, this is what I'm doing. These are the things I need to do. There's never been a time where we have been told, you must do this. And that's what I think people think. People think you have to do this. No, we are doing us. And you have to sustain that. But you can't just look at that and go, I need to be there. No, the community is this. That's just one platform. And I think a lot of people think that's the make or break platform. No.
Yeah, I mean, I've still felt that way. Like, in thinking of Back to the Lab, like, it would be a real bucket list thing to... I've pulled it away from breaking convention now in the spirit of manifesting it, that like main stage saddlers in my name would be like top dollar stuff. But not in a way that detracts from any of the other achievements that I'm making.
Yeah. If it's in the list, you go, I would love to do that, and you never achieve that, okay. But don't forget the journey of what you have achieved as a human being, not even as an artist, just as a human being. To express yourself in this time is a blessing in its own right. And sometimes we lose face on the journey of what we're going because we're too busy focusing on the destination. You get on a train, you look out the window, oh, I didn't realize that. Oh, I need to go to this area again because I just passed it to go over there. But that moment within that little glimpse to the side brings so much more information to developing and expanding your ideas. Do you know what I mean? It really pulls you into that space. So going from your living room to a studio, don't forget the energy that you got in your living room when you're creating, because you when you start going into a bigger space, you're losing the intimacy.
Yeah.
If I might touch on that a little bit.
Touch away.
So Ken and I just made, Ken used some rep. There wasn't any new work in your Just Us pieces.
Other than changing it from the amount of people doing it.
But I just made a 15-minute piece on an apprenticeship company, and I made a point of making it with the methods from my intensive, because as much as I teach them, I don't use them because I just haven't been making work to use them, I guess. And I don't think making choreography to teach classes calls for it necessarily. But I actually made a point of just filming myself move into the 4 songs that I was going to use and having that be the basis. And there's something really careless about that. So you've just freestyle. I did freestyle with it in mind. So I do think if you can have a freestyle that has a choreographic thought to it, I think that's possible. Like, you know that you want to get phrases out of it. But I literally did that and pulled some phrases out, and that's what I built the piece on. And I think that is a really foreign way for our community to approach movement, with just that, like, and so that's just where it all comes from. That whole piece is going to be built out of those things, those 4 8 counts. But it did prove to me to be a really fruitful and like light process because of that. Like, it came out of my living room and went into the space with these 5 strangers. Cash isn't a stranger, but with these people that I didn't know, and the combination of those things is the piece. And I do know, just with the thing about the audience, having the audience in mind, we had to do these interviews to go before the pieces, and it's like, what do you want the audience to get from it? It's like, I don't care. And the guy filming was like, I was like, well, I don't know them, so making with them in mind doesn't make any sense to me. Like, to have one person watching that I don't know makes no sense. To have, like, there'll be 70 people watching, I have no, like, it's just it's a big collection of ideas, expectations that I have no idea about. So it's not for you. And I think where we differ in making is it tends to be a lot of solo work. So it would make sense that it's for me. But in this context, I found that the piece means a lot to us. And if through them, the guys performing it, it resonates and means a lot to the people watching, fantastic. But the piece existing and meaning a lot to us is kind of where it ends for me.
So like the art is them watching you do something that is meaningful for you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's how you would see
like
it.
I called them golden eggs. I was clearly wrong. Easter eggs. We've got one in the piece that I just know makes no sense to anybody else.
Yeah.
And it's a good 4 8s long. And I'm laughing my head off. It's my favourite part. And I'm like, people are going to watch this and think, like, what on earth is happening there? And I would say in our community, there seems to be a desire to never have that questioned. Like, we never want anyone to watch our work and go, what on earth is happening there? Because we've all been to that super abstract contemporary thing where it's like, you did not want me to know what was happening.
Yeah.
And that really annoyed me. So we go out of our way to go to the other end of the spectrum. Like,
Super
everyone
clear.
must leave clear. I want you all to leave with the exact same idea about what just happened. And I think that, again, leads us to this limited, like, same color stuff that we've got or had going on.
You know what I think for me, what I find interesting, and this is part of what I was speaking about earlier about me finding finally some validation in myself and my art, is like, I think I've come to realize that a lot of what inspires me and a lot of what has pushed me towards art in general and creating has been in a way, like commercial capitalistic type things. So the things that like inspire me the most is like hip hop music, and the rappers that I like are commercial. I'm not like, oh yeah, this underground guy you've never heard of. It's like Drake is one of the most inspiring like musicians for me in my lifetime, and I have deep reasons as to why, but he's still a very commercial person. And Marvel and fashion and like these brands that I look at and like their adverts inspire me, like the Louis Vuitton fashion show that they just did, that Virgil, he made a film because it was obviously not live stuff. But like that inspired me so deeply, and it's to sell clothes. It's like, yes, it's creation and it's art, but it's to sell clothes. And it for that to like move me in the way that it did, I spent years thinking that wasn't valid.
Right.
Like I can't be inspired by Marvel. Like I can't be inspired by Drake. Like I have to be inspired by like something abstract and weird, and I have to go to a gallery and be inspired. I can't be inspired in my home with Spotify, you know? And I think this is what I don't know how yet, but this is what I want to lean into and learn, is that like my creation comes from these things, and therefore what I create is going to have that feel, and it's going to have, my creation process is even going to have that mentality of like, I don't know, if I'm going to dance, like, how do I dance like I want to sell the clothes that I'm wearing? Right. You know what I mean? Or something like that. And it's, again, it's like from the book and from stuff that you've taught me, is not in this way, but to learn that what I feel and what moves me is valid. And I think that's something that I'm having to still get to grips with in that way. And I think, that's kind of, I guess, the difference of why I can tend to get wrapped up in what people think and stuff, because that's where the inspiration comes from, is an audience facing art form. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know, Jonathan, as well, if you're listening to this and thinking this is very like hip hop problems, like, is this something that is only like confined to our industry or our type of art forms, or are these things that you've heard elsewhere?
No, what I'm hearing, and that I recognize completely, is that it's not, I mean, when we say I don't care, you have to at a certain level not care, but it's not a stupid not caring. It's not an againstness. It's not setting yourself as an island against other people. Actually, everything we do only has permission from the community that we do it within. But what it's about is that there's a Kenrick, you kept using the idea of the journey, and for me, what matters is that the journey holds its own integrity, which as an artist you search, you lose, you refine, you recalibrate, you change track, but that integrity that the journey holds matters more at any given moment than the feedback or response to one thing you did in one particular context. And what I find is that dance institutions, the dance culture industry, the venues, the festivals, the funding bodies, they don't support enough an idea of longevity, an idea of being ecological with yourself as an artist over years. There's still this obsession with singular success, but everybody knows that, even if you find success, it comes and goes. There are different layers of success. There are different ways that you read success. And I would wish that as dancers we could find ways for that to be more spoken about.
I want to touch on, we spoke about it in I think it was the intro pod. I'm just going through like, what would I like to ask these two if this is the only opportunity I get to ask it? I'm trying to keep it in the ideas lane, but it is in there. I'm not sure you'll know this, Jonathan, just how informative isn't the right word, but just how much of an impact some of the statements you make in the room with hip hop dancers and in your book, if hip hop eyes find them. But when we spoke about freestyle being just as valid as choreographed steps, and it being a form of choreography, and I wondered about asking this question because I didn't pass through a formal training. Like Kenrick and Boy Blue in 2003-04 is as formal as my beginnings. It was formal because it's all the training that I was doing at that time. So I guess I call it formal in that that's where I was trained. But I don't know if these ideas are well known in more contemporary circles, but just how you arrived at that. Was it always instilled in you that was the case, or?
I mean, I'm always against this binary between improvisation or what has been copied or learned, because as a dancer, I mean, I understand when I improvise, there's a certain sense of freedom, which is different from the sense of freedom than if I were to copy you or if I were to reproduce something that I was learning. But deep down, the feeling is not so dissimilar for me. And so at the moment, I'm spending a lot of time trying to investigate this. I've been speaking recently to an extraordinary neuroscientist. His name is Guido Orgs. He teaches at Goldsmiths University, and he was a professional contemporary dancer. And he's brilliant at arguing from a neuroscientific basis why improvised movement would not fundamentally follow different structures of physiological production or brain production than learned or copied movement. But it is an obsession equally in contemporary dance as in hip hop, the difference between the two. But I think for me, it comes back to the problem of the word choreography. I find this a very difficult word. It's not going to change. It's really stuck. But it's such a loaded word. And so for myself, I try to separate the idea of the choreographer, which is a hierarchical figure who imposes or colonizes on somebody else's body and spirit and possibilities. I'm trying to separate that from the feeling of choreography. And for me, the feeling of choreography, everybody who dances in any ongoing way experiences this feeling of choreography, regardless of whether they're freestyling or whether they're replicating something which they're creating for a showcase or a performance. And it's this feeling is part of a very universal human pleasure of making something. But in our case, the thing we make is gone. As we make it, it's disappearing. And for those of us that subject ourselves to a life within dance, we're there because we love that. We love the fact that it's here and gone. It's the beauty of it.
I didn't improvise at all. It just made me think, actually, and I'd forgotten that you were the main inspiration for the whole project. I did a freestyle pack called Negotiations, and it was around the two statements that you made, that I think improvisation is a negotiation between the patterns that your body is thinking. Did I get that right?
I have no idea.
Confirm it for me.
I just right.
And then the same statement was made about choreography and about improvisation. That was just like a
negotiation with the patterns your body is thinking. That's what it was.
And that was fascinating to me, and you expanded on it in that your brain and body are just making the decisions quicker. Like you said, I think it was really nicely put the way you just said it. You know, it's kind of gone as quickly as it arrives, but it still arrives. Whereas with us, with set movements, just hangs about. And I think that is a really nice way to think about it and to put them in the same space, because I think it's us that have spoken about it before. Like Ken, if we think of showcases and if someone just comes on and does a freestyle, it's thought of as lazy, or it's because they didn't get a piece together. But put in the right hands, it's just as beautiful to watch, if not more so, than agonizing over a 2-minute
also
piece.
It's quite funny that we would think that, given that a lot of us train our freestyle for years. Like,
I think that's changed now,
well, yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
But I've still felt it, in pieces, like, oh, I'm gonna put in, this part is gonna be improv, and then I'm like, oh, but maybe I should cut. And it's like, I have spent 10 years obsessing over my freestyle.
Being good at that.
Yeah, and it's like, I've done that more than anything in my life. Like, this is, in fact, the most developed part of this entire piece is my freestyle. Mm-hmm. But I think of it as like, oh yeah, I just threw it in because I couldn't think of anything. Mm-hmm. Or I feel that guilt, sometimes. Not so much now, and especially I find more of a freedom in that, in the theatre realm, where that, rather than like showcasing, or like Dancers Delight kind of thing, where that was, and maybe it's because that was the truth, that a lot of us in those showcase days just threw in freestyles because we couldn't think of choreography. So maybe there's something in that.
Yeah, and I think with now that we're older and the world of commissions and funding becomes a little more clarified and B within reach, the concept of spending hundreds of pounds on rehearsing and devising a piece to then have a no shade 10-minute tech and like no wings is I will just do a freestyle because I can just turn up and do that. And I've trained it long enough and hard enough for that to be valid. So that's how I feel about that now.
And I think like there's even something that I haven't really, I mean, maybe you guys have seen, but like to go even further on that and make your freestyle like the art, and like maybe have some concept where there's a, like you give a track list and it's like played at random on the night.
I've wanted to do that for a really long time. Just have, like, I know the songs well enough so I won't be caught off guard by whatever the choice is, but whether it's the host or I don't know, an audience member, just someone pick the song and I'd
even love for it to be even further, and just like an audience member picks a track of their own choosing. They've literally never heard it before, but it's literally like the piece is you freestyling. It's not like, oh, I'm freestyling, and it's literally, here's my movements that happen live in response to a song I've never heard before this performance. But I think that would be interesting and valid and nice. But I don't think I've ever seen anyone do something like that. I don't know if this is more of a thing in the classical world. Has that been done, where the freestyle, the improvisation is the like artistic experiment on the night?
I guess freestyle funk forums in that realm.
Yeah.
True.
We've done that before, where it's just literally track comes on and you move. It depends on what kind of structure you want, because when I was just thinking about you saying about, sometimes people think that, oh, I just did a freestyle, so it's kind of lazy. For me, it's like, no, because if your movement quality is quality, you can come into a space and go, like, even on the day, say, for example, someone calls me up and goes, Ken, I can't perform. I go, do you want to do a solo? Or I haven't put anything together. I just appreciate you dancing.
Just do a solo.
Just come and do a solo.
I guess any laziness comes from, for me personally, I knew that my freestyle wasn't then as strong as my choreography would have been. Whereas now I would argue
I think
that maybe
if you train, or if you play with, if you play with your elements of freestyle, improv, whatever you want to call it, and you continue to play within that space, all you're doing is you're feeding your subconscious. So when you said about freestyle is negotiating the patterns, for me, I 100% agree. Because for me, I play within my matrix. So I have these,
you've got a shorthand.
Internal lines and space and time where it is. So what I find is that your brain has a conveyor belt of moves. So if you know within the music, this certain thing is going to come, you're going to bring you need to use this movement, or it feels like you need to go down now. So that's what you're doing. You're kind of talking to yourself and saying, you're doing this, but you're doing this within this moment. Choreography, you have a bit more time to go, okay, I feel like I need to do this. I feel like I need to do that. But for me personally, I've always said that choreography is structured freestyle.
You know what? I was going to bring this up because this is something that is so funny. Like, I think it was like Camber Sands or like these,
goodness me.
Yeah, it was like 2007. Like, I heard you say this years ago in, I think it was a group setting or passing conversation. And I immediately disagreed wholeheartedly. I was like, no, I don't like this. Like, I remember you saying that and I just had my energy of being me. And I was like, no, I don't like it. I don't agree with that. Because for me, it was like, I guess the freestyle was less valid than me how do you call that, like engineering something. And I was like, well, if I put time and effort into these moves, of course they're going to be more valid than something I just thought of. And it's funny because it's like, I always remember you saying that even before you brought it out now. And the older I've got and the more experience I've got, the more I've agreed with you.
Because you know what it is? For me, what Tali said about what she did with the piece, he said, I played with the energy, and whether you filmed what that was, and then looked at it and gone, this is the vibe. I'm gonna grab stuff. So there's been times where I've actually said to myself, okay, I'm gonna challenge myself. I would put track on for 2 minutes, literally freestyle, then watch back the video and learn it.
Yeah.
And that to me is choreography because I've done it. I've relayed it back to myself. So
it's lovely and quick as well.
So sometimes it's like, because you can overthink. And for me, what I do sometimes as well is that if I'm teaching a class or if I'm going to choreograph something, I'll have that track in my head over and over again, cleaning, doing this, boom, in my head, going on a bus, in my head. So when I get to the space, I'm giving you the rawest moment there and then. And I'm choreographing there and then. That's when you're getting the choreography. But I've already started to structure subconsciously because I've gone from this sound comes here, this movement, okay, go down, go up, go left, go right. But my left and my right will be different. So I'll just play with all of that. And there are times where I've done solos, which is pure freestyle. I think there's one, the first one of them I did was at Collabo, and Mikey did the remix to Ain't Nobody, the Claire Maguire track. And yeah, that one. Yeah. So, and that's what Just Us Dance are doing for the apprenticeship. So when I did that, all I did was just listen to the track over and over again. But when I kept on the day, there was no structure other than I know what I'm going to do here. The feeling is this, the feeling is this, the feeling is this. But other than that, when I've done it again, it will never be the same. So I've made structure within my freestyle to know I need to hit this moment or place that. So there's little structures, but other than that, I am dancing.
Well, I think... Oh, go on, sorry.
Sorry.
No.
How do you relay that onto... Sorry, it's because I was chomping on my Belvita. Sponsorship, please.
Wow.
How do you transfer that onto other bodies, that idea then? Was that a musical... Like, did they need to hit certain things in the music, or was it just you've got this amount of time, do your thing?
There's certain things where I go, okay, there's this part of the music that you need to hit. Other than that, do what you want.
Right.
Like, there are moments like that. Like,
do you direct them like how to hit it, or is just what you... Like, is it how you would hit it, that's what they have to do? Or is it just, here's your marker, do something on that marker, but other than that?
It varies. Okay. For example, the Tillender piece that we have, that is to the track Tillender. In that, you have the energy of the whole piece is about you as a soloist, but you also as an ensemble. And I feel like they're both very important. So at some point, you're going to have a solo moment or a freestyle moment to show who you are, and these are your powers. In the music, there is, let's say, 24 musical references. Hit those 24.
Got you.
But do what you're doing to those 24. So there's a structure, but you are going to go, like if you go, okay, go 1, 2, 3, 4. Next person goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Like whatever it is. And I may go, you do, like there may be from a directing point of view, what does this sound make you feel to do? Instead of just going, if we're going to add a little bit more structure, a little bit more energy towards it, what does that sound represent? What does the bass represent? What does the snare represent to you? What style are you doing to that part. So in Tilenda, there's been versions where it's like you just straight dance. But in the last one that we did at Dance's Delight, where there was 11 of us, each solo has a different vibe. So once you have
it's not. Sorry, Kim.
Just stop.
No, you're good. You're
so good. Once you have your vibe, you do that. So then now, if you're doing solo 8 and solo 8 is popping, anyone who comes in and does solo 8 is doing popping, but you do you.
Yeah, I watched that. So I watched the run.
Do you know what I mean? You do that within your style. So once you do that, that's fine. But if you're there, for me, from a director's point of view, if you're there doing this, and the beat of the musicality is doing what it's doing, and you're all over the place, I'm gonna go, nah. You're not becoming the visual audio that I need you to do in order for the audience to see the sounds that they can't hear. So that's where I'm at sometimes. It depends on how much musicality I want them to hit. But if it's a thing whereby you have 24 musical references that you need to hit, then you need to hit them. And that's from a director's point of view. If it's just a straight solo, do what you're doing. But if there is a reason because the piece requires you to hit those, then that's important.
In that, my question that I would feel like I'd failed the community if I didn't ask it, given that you're here, is we rectified this.
Yeah. Sorry, we're bringing you back because at the moment there's no video feed, so we should be back on.
I just love the silence between you, just the.
Yeah, it's like, no, you're doing it wrong.
Yes, Kenrick.
Jenny is now responsible for the visuals being back on, so thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Jenny.
Sorry if I was distracted.
No, it's fine. Would be around your notation. Anyone that's experienced this through Kenrick might look at the page and be like, oh, by golly, wow.
When you say notation.
So the exercise that I do in the...
Because also for context, you've worked with Kenrick like professionally and I have never. So I've...
The way you said that, it felt like a dig. I felt like you have, but I haven't. So... Yeah.
So just saying, no.
So explain what notation is, because I know what it is by definition, but I'm going to need you to expand upon it, because in the context of Kenrick, I have no idea, because he's never paid me.
For context, so Kenrick thinks you're good and he doesn't think I'm good. So
sounds like he tells you you're good more than he's ever told me I am, but
well, that's because he says it with a wallet.
And contract.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's in the contract. No. So no, the reason I say that is because we both have a lot of experience with your work. Obviously, like Tali's been in the scene longer, but you've been inside the process and I've only been in the audience. So it's a very different, even you being in the audience of a Boy Blue show, knowing the behind the scenes, you take different things from it than I would, because I'm only seeing the finished products, if that makes sense.
Yes, I will say that Ken 03, 04, 03 to 05 and Ken, there's a big gap in my working with the company. It's like, when did it start?
2001.
Okay, so if I'm in there like 2 years after its inception and then I'm not there again until 15 years after the fact.
So there was a big gap between that and Red?
Yeah, huge. Okay. Always around each other and personally involved, but I didn't do any work with, unless I'm wrong, there's nothing in between, is there really? I don't think I did anything between like being in the company and in the beginning and Red. I really don't think so. I experienced the notation in Artists for Growth though. That's where I saw it. Like I literally came back from Los Angeles the day before and then we come back and he's doing some like high intensity workout stuff. I literally had to go and lie on the cold toilet floor in Redbridge Drama Centre and get my life together. I was in bits. Do you remember?
You were finished.
I was finished.
It was you and some next guy. I can't remember what his name is.
I want to know who this is.
Finished.
But I'd literally got off an 11-hour flight like the night before, so of course I was. But that plus just not being in that level of training in general was just like equaled an absolute disaster. Cut through to Red and I expected to throw up on a daily basis and I don't think I did once. So
nice.
Swings are red a bit.
But sorry, bringing it back to notation, yes.
So Kenrick has a way of writing choreography down. whether it's rhythm, but he's doing the movements physically, or actually the movements are on a page.
And is that from a place of, well, I don't know who I'm asking here, but is that from a place of you creating it and writing it down so you remember, or that's how you convey to the dancers what they need to do?
Both.
Okay, cool.
And it seems the reason that I'm curious anyway about how you arrived at it, but in the thought of ideas and efficiency, it just makes so much sense, especially because you work with so many dancers, and because you've got so many things going on. It's just a great way to, like, here's the thing, go and learn the thing. Not in that way,
shoot,
but go and learn the thing. And I think I think it's genius. I just wonder how you arrived at it and when, and just any details around it that you'd be willing to share.
Okay, so I think going back to what you were talking about, brand. When was it? You might have been around at the time, Tali, or maybe just before. We started to standardize our own movement. So we would have our own vocab, like pause. That became an anthem move. Ninja walk, that one became an anthem move. So by having all this vocab and looking at hip hop and going, okay, hip hop is much more of a US thing. From a UK point of view, what is our stamp? What is our energy? Even though we're influenced from it, what can we say is ours? And there's a history and there's a whole thing about it. Even when we worked on the film Street Dance 3D with the battle scene with Flawless and the other guys. The other guys. Like Rhymes and Game and all them, and T. They were doing one move, they were going down and up, that one, right? So the influence of that is the prep. But I was like, that's too, it doesn't feel like it's battle enough. So let's use the arms and let's get a bit more. So now that's called the SD bounce or street dance bounce from the film. So we've kept that, and those who know Boy Blue, we've rinsed that. That's like a transitional move. You gallop and you go like this and you groove into it.
I think I know which one you're talking about.
So with that, having that vocab, and each move, if it's a groove or a groove combo, has a 3-letter abbreviation. If it's a routine, it has a 4-letter abbreviation. So I could send a WhatsApp message to the group and go, you're going from this into this. Next rehearsal, you should know what you do, the combination. So it's literally, left is an L, right is an R in a bracket. So you just see the whole choreography, but you have to know the foundation. So you got your form, you got your formula, and you got your frequency. I need everyone to get on the right frequency. So I need to give you the form. You have to understand the move, the abbreviation, the knowledge. The formula, I've written it out. Then the frequency, you should be able to just blossom because you know everything. So in my head, the transition was, I'm making all this choreography, I'm doing all of this stuff. I need to put more structure into what I'm doing because there's a lot of chaos going on. I need the orderly chaos. So
in the room or in your mind?
In my mind. And sometimes when you want to explain something or you kind of go, it's here. I will write out the musicality of a whole section with the words. I'll give you a symbol of the sound, and I'll highlight, this is what you're hitting. And if I'm doing a piece which has 2 to 3 things going on at the same time, so the musicality is this group is hitting this, you guys are hitting this, I will break the whole thing down, because then the aim is that if I want to give that to an assistant or a rehearsal director, they can see the whole thing and I've done my job for that. So I've now standardized that piece to a level where I don't even have to be in the room anymore.
So in the way that maybe a conductor or whoever would give sheet music, you give sheet dance, I guess.
Yeah, because I guess when you said it, I thought of Into the Hoods, and once the show existed, we could create the book, and then that could be passed on to other casts, other creatives to remount the show, but you use it as a means of actually creating in the first instance. It's genius.
Each routine has a name. So when we was doing black, white, grey or red, each routine will have a particular name. You're going from this into this. You're going from version 2 of this. So I can then make it palatable. If there's an energy of the piece, but it's not necessarily a structure of the piece, I would choreograph the energy. And this is where the kind of listening to the music and then coming to the space and going, this is the feeling. This is 2/8, this is 4/8, this is 1/8. And then you literally just put it on sheets of paper, stick it on the wall and go, we're going to go from this one into this one, into this one, to this one. Do it, see it. Nah, move this. Guys, how does that feel? Yeah, that feels better.
Yeah, I think it's a really quick way to, similarly to taking from a freestyle. For instance, in Red, there was a shrug section. So we knew what the movement was and whether we were going high or low, we knew what that was. And we'd have on a piece of paper, like left, right in columns, and it would be, you know, left, left, right, right, high left, high right. And so we could go away and do that. And it's a, like you said, with like putting that there, it's a easy way to visualize editing as well.
Yeah.
You can like, oh, let's just try taking all of that there without having to do the physical work of how. Just do it. Let's do it. And that's what it is. And now go away and figure out how to physically do it. Great.
I think it's just help me to help you to help me. it's literally that. But then at the end of it, you've got a standard, and this is what I'm saying about the brand. You have a standardized piece now. You've got everything. You know what you need to do. You've got videos of the performance. You've got the notation of the performance. You've got even the stimulus, the energy of the whole thing. PDF, boom. Dropbox, bang. It's there.
I would say that we said don't steal at the beginning of the pod. I've definitely stolen from both of you, but in ways that it's come through me and out in a different way. And your notation with music, I use in a exercise just to step us, because in our community we make with music very strictly. You all have seen it in Back to the Lab, I'm sure. Step away. So I'll take a song and with the different layers of production, like notate it, and then the group make with that.
I've done that. Exactly. Yeah.
And then listen and make it make sense after the
So
fact.
I think to clarify, like we don't play, it's in silence, like we don't play the music, we
Actually,
just see
I think I go, oh, you need 30 moves. That's the first step. And then it's, right, this is your rhythm.
And that's on paper, so it'll say like
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and.
And that's without hearing the music at all.
You still won't know if it's a trumpet or a, you know.
It's just rhythm. Yeah.
And then you hear it. And I think that it's a really nice way. It's hard to do it for yourself because you'll have heard the song to notate it. Is notate a word or note it? Notate?
Notate.
Yeah, I think so.
But it's a nice way to come up with language that you wouldn't necessarily if you'd heard the music or known the tempo, because, you know, you've just made your 30 moves and that felt nice, but man, this is a drum and bass track. This is impossible. It's like, no, it's not. You just did it. It's just going to take some time. So thank you for that.
What I love, Kenrick, as you were describing this process with the notation and the analysis of the moves in relation to the music, is that the whole time you were speaking, you were drawing with your hand, you were writing with your hand. And I think that's the thing that people misunderstand about that kind of process. They think it's an attempt to make the thing into language. It's not to do with language, and it's to do with a kind of feeling in your body. So you said earlier on, Kenrick, that you draw a lot. And I draw a lot. I think drawing is a way exactly to visualize something that will be larger physically, that will be more energized. But at this moment in time, you're just pulling it back to its trace elements. And when you pull it back to its trace elements, you're sensitive to it, and you're sensitive to what will this stand next to, and what's the transition between this and that, because you've not overloaded it with your own desire and emotion in the moment of doing it. So yeah, I completely feel what you described then.
I just have to say, this is a little bit off the topic, but as a teacher, I aspire to communicate myself to people in a way that you do, because there are just no words that don't have value. It's true of all of us here, but that just everything that Jonathan says, in my experience, is just like a really distilled communication of an idea.
But you know what? I don't know if this is going to help, but I feel like that about you as a teacher.
I feel like that about all four of you.
Yeah, I do
We're
get
all
that,
great.
but I think because I've spoken to you the least, and I have more examples of like nuggets of words put next to each other. The fact that the small collection that I do have, they are all valuable, is wild. With you guys, when we talk about dance, it's exactly the same, but I guess the collection of words that I have placed next to each other verge on the ridiculous, the drunken, there's a lot more at play in that realm, but I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, and no, but I think, with the teaching thing, I think it's still on the realm of ideas, because it's communicating ideas, and I think what you it's weird because now I see you as very much a friend and a peer and stuff, but there's been a lot of times that I've seen you as a teacher or a mentor kind of figure, especially the less we knew each other. But I feel like what you have helped me to realize maybe is that like there's a kind of delicate art to teaching and facilitating creation, where it's not like a lot of the teaching I have been exposed to in my life is do this is what will help, do this is what will help. And what I think I gained a lot from you, and actually from the Choreographer's Handbook as well, is like it's a lot of the idea of like just asking a question, or like the idea of facilitating learning,
just like
as opposed
inserting
to
an idea
giving
into
it
a
to you.
space.
Yeah, like this is how you get better. And then I feel like Tali's kind of approach to me has been like, well, how do you want to get better? Oh, well, I want to do this, this, and this. And then you'll just say something like, is that what you want to do? And I'm like, whoa, hold on, I need a minute. Like you just say like one thing that it's like, it gives me the ability to find my growth in myself, instead of you saying this is the way to get better. And I think there's a balance, but
yeah, because I was going to say, if I do think of Ken and Jonathan as the two senseis, I would say that Jonathan has done that for me, and that was my first experience of being exposed to that sense of play, like serious analysis and like deconstruction, but in a way that the conclusion wasn't necessary in the moment. It was just like, let's have a think about this, or a conversation about this. But then I think that's important in a room, in the intensive, where we're not trying to make anything, so that's there. But I'd say where Kenrick, through performing in Red, and just seeing how the company physically moves and is clearly very unified, is like, right, now how do we take that sense of play in that set of individuals, and if necessary, how do we unify? Because in the spirit of making work and pieces, that is going to be necessary at times.
Go on.
Pondament.
Oh no, you didn't.
No, I was just looking at the pondament.
Yeah, no, it's just like, I think when it comes to just your ideas, you do have to take a moment to reflect on your process, even if it doesn't make sense. It's like sometimes I feel like I want to get one of my books, photocopy it, and cut all of the pages into small pieces, and then just throw them all together, and then just turn them, and then just put the random parts next to it, and then just play within that, even though there is still structure because I've cut it up into pieces. Sure. But there's chaos. There's chaos of the fact I've done this, but now let me put some structure. And
there's no like external factors because it's all your stuff. Right. It's just creating chaos out of your stuff.
Exactly.
I saw a score of the choreographer William Forsyth where he'd done exactly that. And he had the original sheet, which was covered in the drawings and diagrams. And then I think what he'd done is he copied it, then he folded it, then he copied it, folded it, and then cut it, and then redistributed the pieces. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And just what is that? Because there's still something.
Yeah, of course.
But you look at it and you go, that's random. But sometimes that randomness is what creates really good work. And I think sometimes where we kind of overthink.
Yeah, try to make sense of it too soon. Or we have this pressure of it has to make sense. You know, you're saying about I want the audience to, that pressure sometimes loses the density of what the idea originally was, because now we're kind of, have to consider this.
Yeah.
Unless I'm going to argue myself, unless you are making, let's say for example, you're making a show for kids, you already know there's certain areas in which I need to really make sure that from an education point of view, I'm hitting the right key stage. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To look and go, okay, in order to educate them and for them to feel they're going to come away with something, I need to make sure I have a conversation about what are key things that I need to do for that age group. I get that.
But I guess it's where you put that in the process.
Exactly. Where do you put it? Do you put it at the very beginning? So my story is this. If my story is this, let's say, for example, go back to Red. If we was to make a kids show of Red, I would have to really think about.
Yes, you would.
From the very beginning, because the stimulus is already there. We're talking about grief. So we already know it's there. But how can it be a conversation for kids to talk about that and be comfortable?
I would love to see a kids version of Red.
Do you know what I mean? Or just do you know when you're talking about just dark pieces, and there's a lot of dark pieces around.
How can you tackle that?
How do you tackle the theme? Because I think there's darkness and then there's a theme. Sometimes people go like, I gotta get dark. No, what's the theme? Because even with, say, black, white, grey, the three sections are very clear things of what we're talking about. And there's a darkness, but it's because there's pixels of light within that darkness. So it's like, how do you draw it in? I think some people just want to go straight dark. Yeah. But they're not looking at
if the darkness is the best way to address that theme.
Exactly.
Yeah, or notice it as, a part of the process, but it might not end up that way. Like the approach that is initially taken, you often kind of get stuck thinking that is, okay, so this is where the piece is and this is what the piece is about, instead of, just staying open to it taking a different shape, I guess.
I think we have to start wrapping. As much as I would love to stay here for another 2 hours. But yeah, I mean, there's so much, especially with you two, there's so much that we could talk about or ask. Like, we could just sit and ask you questions for 3 hours alone.
Is there anything else pressing that you would like to? Because
when else?
We're here.
Nothing one more pressing than the other. Like, it's just like there's a lot of things that I would love to speak to you both about, but yeah, there's nothing that, I mean, it's all equally pressing. How about you?
I think I've asked the main two that I came with, like just needing to have them said. And yes, this is 1 in 4 of a series, but the hope is there that we can continue to have conversations.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm talking about on the podcast.
Yeah,
like,
of
I'm
course,
sure
of course.
I could talk to you guys in real life, and I'm sure we will. But yeah. So, well, first of all, thank you both for being here.
So much. I
Thank you.
really
Super
appreciate
appreciate
it. Thank you.
And like I say this all the time on the podcast, but for me with the guests, like the fact that you want to come here and sit down and have a conversation with me and Tali is like such a compliment. So I really appreciate that, and it means a lot beyond just being able to produce content. Like, it means something that you would want to come down and have these conversations, even if the cameras weren't on or whatever. It would still mean a lot to me. So thank you for that. I feel like I personally learned a lot.
Same.
And not only, from both of you over my career, like with Jonathan Spurker or Kenrick, just, the times we've spoken and stuff, I've learned a lot from both of you and now. So that's great. And I feel like a portion of this was you giving me advice about my work, so that's helpful too.
Just solid across the board.
Yeah, I was just like, well, thanks, I'm going to use this opportunity to get some feedback. And yeah, as always, thank you to Tali, because not only do I feel the same about you coming to sit down with me, and you're someone who I value a lot, artistically as well as a friend, but like the fact that you would even come and do a podcast with me, let alone do a series of 4 and work together on them. And your continuing belief in me and my work is
always and forever, buddy.
Very it's something, let me say it like this, it's something that's helped me to be able to validate myself.
Good.
Like the people, not that I need the validation from the outside, but where I've been struggling with imposter syndrome, insecurity, whatever, the people that have believed in me have helped me to be like, well, I've like, if they believe in me, if Tali wants me to work on a podcast, like maybe I do have something interesting to say, and maybe the stuff that I like, the ideas that I have is not just crap, and I'm not just complaining about everything that I see. Like I am, but maybe there's some validity in there. So
Absolutely.
So I super appreciate you for that. And for everyone listening, thank you so much for listening. And I am working on making the podcast a more viable, I don't want to say business, but like getting some funding to do it properly and to...
This is proper.
True. In production wise, produce it properly, have a team behind it, you know, do more consistent conversations, because at the moment we're working on small collaborations as and when we can. I want to create runs where it's like a certain number of weeks every week, different guests. So please, if you are listening and you do enjoy the podcast, please make it known. Please, you know, write to me, please, you know, share it, whatever. Not that I want engagement that isn't real, but if you do really engage with this, please, you know, make it count. Because these things matter in terms of getting funding, in terms of doing more. And also, the more I know that people want this, the more I'll do. If people don't want it, I don't need to do this. Do you know what I mean? I'm not doing it like, you know, if no one wants it, it's this totally fine. But
yes.
I feel like there may be a need for stuff like this. So
Agreed.
if there is, let me know. I think I've said all my thank yous. Anything else to add, Miss Talladega?
No. Talladega Nights. No. Just immense gratitude. I'm just looking at the floor, very pleased. Very pleased at the thought that we had.
Oh, and if you haven't heard of it or seen it or read it, definitely check out the Choreographer's Handbook. I do, like, this is not because Jonathan's here. I recommend this to a lot of people that I work with or speak to. Like, it's I actually think I hit 2 of my 3 points earlier, but my last point was that it's like, I feel like that book is like a piece of art in itself. It's not like, here's how to do this. It's very poetically written, and it's like, that book is quite an artistic read, even if you never took any lessons from it. So it's definitely worth a read, I think. And yeah, obviously, like, check out Kenrick's work and speak to him, and you know,
engage with all the greatness that he is
like,
participating in and creating. He and Mikey and the whole Boy Blue and team. The community thanks you and are forever indebted to you, my friend. Fist bump.
Cool. Thank you, everyone, for being here and for listening. And catch us next week for the industry portion of this, which will be the 4th and final episode. So yeah. Alrighty then.
Until then, friends.
Adios.
Goodbye.
Such an unceremonious end. Like, there's nothing.
It's like, I don't need to do this. Oh, guys, thank you.
Oh, my ears feel
honestly.
Wait.
Sweaty ears.
Sweaty.
Right? Yeah.
Weird. There's a lot of listening.